our 7th week of this series looking at the parables of Jesus. And what I love about the parables of Jesus is it connects us so deeply to the heart of God. A part of our vision of our church, why we started this church community is we wanted to create a place to belong. A place where you could come and feel like you really have the chance to be known and get to know others. And so that's a part of our vision. But it's not just a place to come and be known. That's good, but really, the heart underneath it, as we become connected as a community, we have the opportunity to bring more of heaven here on earth. That's our vision. We want to bring more of heaven into our city. And that's what the parables are talking about. See, Jesus uses time through his teaching to talk about his kingdom, the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven, it's heaven. It is the way the world was supposed to look before sin came into the world. It's the way the world will look again one day. But what Jesus is trying to help us understand is we don't have to wait until that point at the end of our life to experience heaven. What Jesus is saying is we need to bring heaven here into our city, into our community, into our world every day. And how we do that is by understanding, well, first of all, what does that look like? And so through the parables, Jesus uses everyday stories and examples to help us understand him. What does it mean that God is love? What does it mean that God has compassion? The parables help us understand and get a picture. Oh, that's what it means when we are supposed to have compassion. That's what God's compassion looks like. And Jesus' invitation for us is the more that we understand that, more we become aware of that reality, that we would be people then that begin living it out here. It's not meant to just be knowledge. It's not just meant to be something we experience, like, great, I experienced God's compassion. God's like, no. It's meant to flow back through you and out into the world. So last week we talked about this idea of forgiveness. And Jesus calls us to be people that walk and operate and live with forgiveness and mercy in this world. At times to live and operate with radical forgiveness and mercy in those around us. But we don't forgive people because it's a nice thing to do or you know what, that's maybe it feels right. We forgive people because of who Jesus is. That we recognize that we had this insurmountable debt and Jesus went to the cross to pay that debt. And if we get that, if we understand even a bit of that reality, that how deeply we've been forgiven by the God of the universe, well, the natural overflow of our life is we should be people that show forgiveness and mercy in light of that reality. And what Jesus tells us is when we operate that way, we are people, moment by moment, bringing more of heaven here on earth. So that's what the parables do. And so I'm excited for this series. We're in our 7th week, just a few weeks left. And this morning, we're going to be looking at another parable where Jesus does both these things. He's trying to help us understand this big, deep, eternal truth about his kingdom and who he is. But he's going to do it through a very practical story that has real practical applications for us. And so if you have a Bible and you want to follow along, we're going to be in Matthew chapter 20. The verses will be on the screen. We're actually, already lied for the first time this morning, we're actually going to be in Matthew chapter 19, starting in verse 30. We're going to back up for one verse. I apologize. And the reason we're doing this is because this verse, 19:30, connects to this entire parable. Remember that these chapter markers and breaks were added afterwards. It's a way to help organize the Bible, so I don't come up here and say, turn to that section in the Bible. No, we actually have page numbers and things, but sometimes we see those page breaks, Matthew 20, and we can think, oh, this is a whole new conversation. And sometimes it is, but sometimes it's a continuation of what was before it. So we need to always kind of pay attention. Is this a new thing or is this a continuation? And in Matthew 20, this whole conversation begins with Matthew chapter 19, verse 30. And Jesus says, but many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. And then Jesus tells this parable, and he ends this parable using that exact same phrase. The first will be the last, and the last will be the first. Meaning all of this is under that conversation. This is called an inclusio. You don't need to know that. It's inclusive. It means this is a bracket. So everything that comes in between these things is all part of the same conversation. Jesus just told us, this is the thesis statement of this parable. First shall be the last shall be the first. Here's the parable. I'm going to end it saying the same thing so we know, oh, this was one bracket of conversation. And so this morning, I'm going to read the whole parable all the way through as best I can with my reading voice, and then we'll go back kind of section by section and break it down. So Jesus says, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius, which is a day's wage. He agreed to pay them a day's wage for the day and sent them into his vineyard. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, 'You also go, work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right.' And so they went. He went out again about noon and about 3 in the afternoon and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, 'Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?' 'Because no one has hired us,' they answered. He said to them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard.' When the evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, 'Call the workers, pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first.' The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came, and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, well, they expected to receive more. But each of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. 'These who were hired last worked only 1 hour,' they said, 'and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of work and the heat of the day.' But he answered one of them, 'I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? And so the last will be the first, and the first will be the last.'" So we'll end our time looking at that big truth. Okay, what does Jesus mean with that statement that he says here and he says kind of throughout his ministry about the first and the last and what that looks like? I want to first start with that practical application, that first layer of all of this. And so the story is a very common one in that time. It's pretty common to us as well. This landowner had a big vineyard, and during certain times of year, during harvest, they would need more workers. And so he goes to this area where he knows there's going to be day laborers, and he goes to hire them to come and work for the day. This is if you've ever gone to Home Depot on a Saturday and you walk out carrying your 4x4 and a hammer and a bag of nails, and they look at you, they're like, "Oh man, this person needs help because whatever's about to happen in their home is not going to be good. For the sake of your wife, let us work for you, and we will build whatever contraption you're trying to build," right? These are the people at Home Depot. They're day laborers. They have skills. There's things they can do. They just don't have a regular job. And so they're standing around all day waiting, hoping someone would hire them. And if they get hired, they'll be paid, and then they'll be able to go back home and be able to help provide for their family. And so he goes out early in the morning when the day starts, 6 a.m., not when my day starts, but apparently when you work in a vineyard, your day starts at 6 a.m., so he goes out at 6 a.m. He sees these guys, and he goes to hire them. What's so interesting about this is what he agrees to pay them, because he says he's going to give them a day's wage. Now, we have to recognize that the amount of people that needed work far outweighed the amount of work that was actually available. And so you have a supply-demand issue, right? Meaning those who had work, they could really negotiate the price. Why do I need to pay you a full day's wage? You'll take slightly less than that. You'll take half of that. You'll do it for a quarter. So I'm going to negotiate this down because I can get the cheapest labor. All these people need work, and there's not that much work to be around. But it says he agreed to pay them a day's wage, whatever that meant, minimum wage for a full 12 hours of work. He agrees to pay what is fair. He agrees to pay what is right, what is just. So he hires these guys, and they come and they work a full day. He goes out 3 hours later, and he finds more people standing around at 9 a.m. He goes to hire them, and notice what it says when he hires these people. He says, "Come and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." He doesn't give them a specific dollar amount. He doesn't say, "I'm going to pay you a day's wage." And obviously, they wouldn't expect that. 3 hours of the day are burnt. So at this point, they haven't been hired. They're hoping to be hired. They're going to take whatever. They're thankful for work. And so they get hired. They go to the vineyard. At noon, he goes out, hires people. At 3 p.m., he goes out and hires people. And then it says at 5 p.m., with an hour left, at the 11th hour of the day, he sees these people still standing around. I mean, the day is done. There's no more work to be done. And yet they're standing there, and I don't know what their motivation was. Maybe they still had a glimmer of hope. Maybe they didn't know what else to do. Maybe they're just desperate, and they're standing there, and he goes and he sees them. And he calls them, and he invites them to come and work. And for these guys, all they would expect at that point is maybe a meal, maybe toss a few coins. Maybe if I work hard enough this hour, maybe you will hire me again at some other point and maybe pay me at this point, right? But there's no expectation. If you're hired at 5 p.m., you should receive anything. But he goes and he hires this person, and they go and work in the vineyard for an hour. The day ends, it's 6 p.m. He tells his foreman to go and begin paying the people for the day's work. And he says, start with the last and end with the first. So the people hired at 5 p.m., he calls them forward. Now, this is all together. This wasn't like in an office where he's calling them one by one and handing them a paycheck. This is, all right, everyone gather together. The 5 p.m. crew, raise your hands. All right, come here. And it says he paid them a full day's wage. I mean, just imagine the abundant generosity of this landowner. He didn't need to pay them anything. And instead, he gives them a full day's wage for an hour worth of work. These guys left, and this would be a day that they would talk about forever, right? This would be a day they'd be like, man, do you remember that one time and that one vineyard owner? And we didn't even know we were going to work that day. Our day was over. We were scared to go home and tell our family that we didn't make any money. And instead, he brings us in, and he gives us a full day's wage. This would be mind-blowing to them, this extravagant grace and generosity he shows them. And then he gets to the 3 p.m. people, and he does the same. Full day's wage. Noon, same thing. 9 a.m., same thing. And if you were part of the 6 a.m. crew, human nature, we're watching all this, and we're like, well, obviously, we're going to get more. We've been here all day. If those random guys who showed up at 5 p.m. get a full day's wage, this is going to be 3 times, 5 times, 10 times what we're supposed to get. And so their expectation now is starting to get really high on what they think they deserve based on what everyone else got paid. And so they get called forward, and they receive a day's pay. It says, when they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. They received the day's pay, what they were promised, what they agreed to, and they began to grumble. For these guys, when the day started, their highest aspiration, the highest hope when they woke up that morning is, man, I hope somebody hires us, and by any miracle, it'll be for 12 hours, and by any miracle, they'll actually pay me a day's wage, what I'm worth. The likelihood is that's not going to happen, and that rarely would ever happen, but that was their highest possible aspiration is, man, when I wake up today, by some miracle, can this come true? And it happened. They were hired. They must have been so joyful, so satisfied all day long while they're working, and they're working hard all day long. They must have felt so satisfied. We're doing a good work. We got what we had hoped for today. This is amazing. We're going to go home and be so happy. We got our full day's wage out of this. And everything was fine. And had those guys been paid first, they would have left there completely satisfied, right? They would have been completely happy. They would have been like, this worked. What a perfect day this was for us. A great day of work, full day's pay. I can go back home to my family. And yet, when they received what was owed to them, they began to grumble. And the only thing that had happened from the time the shift ended to the time they got paid is they began to notice what other people began to make. And when they began to notice that, when they compared what they earned to how hard they worked, and looked at what other people earned and how hard they worked, they moved from places of complete satisfaction to suddenly becoming very, very dissatisfied. And the only gap in there was they began to compare themselves with others. See, this is the practical application Jesus wants us to understand. This is that first layer, right? There's a deeper thing we're going to get to, but the first practical layer is this idea of comparison. And Jesus is warning us, watch out for the danger of comparison. Now, comparison is a very normal part of our life. There's nothing wrong inherently with comparing things. When you leave for work tomorrow, you're going to check traffic and compare routes to figure out which is going to get you there faster, or if you hate your job, what's going to get you there the slowest. When you go out to dinner and you look at the menu, you're going to look at all the mains. And if you're like my wife, Michelle, you're going to choose your mains based off the sides. And if something's got mac and cheese, it doesn't matter what the main is. We're going to go with whatever's got the mac and cheese, right? We're comparing our entrees. We're comparing our choices. When you go on vacation, you look at the different places and the different excursions. And here's what we can do if we go here. And if we go here, we can do this instead. And here's the hotel. And here's the amenities, right? There's nothing wrong with comparison in itself. It's a very basic thing we do all the time. We do subconsciously. We're always comparing things. But Jesus is warning us that there is a danger, that there's a line that we can cross and we can fall into the trap of comparison, and it can do what happened in this story. It can move us from places of satisfaction to dissatisfaction in our life. And so this is something we need to be aware of. He's trying to warn us, be careful of this thing. And this is all around us, right? This is constantly happening to us. There's things all around that are seeking to make us feel dissatisfied. All of marketing and advertisement is geared to make you feel dissatisfied with the thing you got, because the promise of the commercial is if you get this, now you will be happy again, right? But it needs to first make you dissatisfied that what you have isn't that good. Look at this other new thing that's really shiny and cool. So you're sitting at home and minding your own business, and next thing you know, you see a commercial for a car, and it's the newest version of your car, and your car is 10 years old, and you're like, my car's falling apart, and look how fast that car goes. Maybe my car needs to go 0 to 40 in 3 seconds or whatever it is. You're like, this is so neat. And now you weren't even thinking about your car. You're trying to watch TV, but now you're annoyed at your car. Now you're dissatisfied at your car, right? All that happened is something came on that made you start comparing what you had to something else. One company that does this so brilliantly well is Apple, and I've got a lot of confessions I'm about to make right now. I'm an Apple nerd. I'm all in on Apple. In my defense, I've been an Apple nerd most of my life. In 1990, when I was 10 years old, you can do that math. I was 10 years old in 1990. I went to my best friend's house, Joel, and Joel was the cool kid. Joel still is a cool kid. He's still my best friend. I went to Joel's house, and his family was an Apple computer family. And in 1990, no one had Apple computers. They were so rare and so expensive. I mean, it was a dying company, but they had an Apple, and it was so cool. And it was cool because Joel thought it was cool. And so I got all in on Apple, became obsessed with Apple. And yes, I had the first iPod in 2001. Yes, I had the first iPod video. Yes, I had the first iPhone. Yes, I had the first Apple Watch. And I've gotten better. I have not bought that Vision Pro thing or whatever. But if this was Amen like 10, 12 years ago, I would have wandered in wearing it, acting totally normal. Like, this is great. So luckily, I'm growing up a little bit. But Apple does this thing that they've been doing for decades. They hold what essentially is a promotional event advertising all of their new products. And they mask it as like, oh, here's a conference, here's a thing. But all it is, it's a TV show showing all their products. It happens at 10 a.m. tomorrow. And you know your boy is going to be sitting on the couch with his coffee, playing on his iPhone, nerding out to all the new things that come out on Apple tomorrow. And I'm going to be sitting there on my phone, mindlessly playing on it, and they're going to show the new phone that comes out in September, and I'm going to look at my phone, I'm going to look at this phone, and suddenly, this phone is no good. Where right now, my phone is perfectly great. I don't know any better. I'm going to be so happy until 10 a.m. tomorrow, and I'll be like, oh, this phone is not good anymore. And I need the new phone with all the new toys. Do I use any of that technology? No, but it doesn't matter, because I might. Apple does this. This is all around us, right? Advertising is designed to make us begin to feel dissatisfied with what's in front of us when we start comparing it to what else is out there. And there's a layer of that, but there's a much deeper layer. And Jesus is saying, be careful when we fall into this trap of comparison, because it can begin to impact our view and our relationship with others and ourselves. Now, if you've ever had this happen in your life, in fact, I know it has happened in your life. It's happened to me quite often, where you are amongst, whether it's people you're in college with, or it's a group of friends, or people you work with, but you're going through your life and you're going through your day and you're really satisfied with where your life is at. And I remember a time in my life out of college, and I was single, and I was happy being single, and it was all good, and then suddenly everyone starts coupling up, and everyone starts getting these serious relationships, and now I'm the weird guy that's alone, and I didn't care about being alone like a month ago, but now that everyone else is, and I'm comparing my life to them, well, suddenly I start becoming dissatisfied. This has happened at work in my life where I'm so thankful for the job I had, and it was a huge blessing when I got that job. It was a miracle, and I'm so thankful. I'm going to work happy. I get a paycheck. Oh, my goodness. And then suddenly I'm looking around at all my friends, and they're making 5 times as much as I am, 10 times as much as I am. I'm looking at the things they're buying and spending, and I'm looking at my life, and I was so happy with what I was making. But now that I'm looking at their life, I'm starting to become dissatisfied with my life and dissatisfied with my job. And the only thing that's happening is I'm taking my eyes off of what I have, and I'm comparing it to what's going on in the lives of those around me. And now we can begin to become frustrated. You can have a job and be happy with your role, be happy with your title, be happy with your pay. No one's happy with their pay. You can be happy with your job and your title and be like, okay, this is really good. And you're totally satisfied, and then somebody gets hired above you or somebody gets promoted and they were on your team and now they have a different role, and how come they're part of that meeting and why are they on that project? And you were fine with your job a day ago, but now suddenly you find yourself dissatisfied because you're comparing what you have to someone else. There's a famous quote by Theodore Roosevelt, and he says, comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison is trying to rob something from you. It's trying to steal something out of your life. And what comparison is trying to steal from your life is satisfaction and joy. This is what Jesus is warning us into, is that when we begin falling into the trap of comparison, yes, it can be innocent. Yes, it can be a little nerdy with technology, but there is a deep layer. And when we start looking at our lives and the season God has us in, whatever that is, and if we start comparing it to the other people in this room, we can start feeling very dissatisfied with the thing in front of us. And it doesn't mean what's in front of you is perfect, right? It doesn't mean that it's not without stress and chaos and pain. It's not saying it's all good. But it's what is in front of you, and how are we viewing that thing? And why are we shifting just because something is happening all around us? This is that first layer that Jesus wants to warn us of. Be careful when comparison starts moving you from satisfaction to dissatisfaction. The other challenge of comparison is what it does is it takes our eyes off of what's in front of us, and we begin focusing on what else is out there. So instead of me having gratitude for the thing that God has given me, instead of having gratitude for my job or my thing or my life or whatever it is, instead of having gratitude for the thing right in front of us, I become far more concerned with what's over there and what I don't have. And so I don't even care about what I have, whatever, fine. That's great. I'm way more consumed by what I don't have. And so now all I'm thinking about is that. And all the joy and all the satisfaction, all the gratitude for what God has given me has gone away. So this is what comparison can do in our life. And these are warning signs. These are signals for us. Man, if you're spending so much of your time thinking about this other thing, and it doesn't say don't have aspirations, don't want to get, of course, those are fine. Those are good things. So when we get consumed and all we're doing is thinking about this other thing, Jesus is saying that's a warning sign. Something is off. These people got what they were owed. They were given a day's wages, all they wanted in their life for that day, and they got it. And instead, they're going to go home so completely dissatisfied because they took their eyes off of what was in front of them. They became consumed by what other people had, and they moved from satisfaction to dissatisfaction. That's that first layer. But there's a much deeper layer that Jesus is trying to help us understand that connects with his kingdom. Remember, the thesis of this entire thing is the first should be the last, and the last should be the first. And that's something Jesus says time and time again. We've looked at it in the parables. When we were in the Sermon on the Mount, we looked at this idea. And what Jesus is trying to open our minds up to is we can make assumptions about others, or maybe even about ourselves, of where we belong in Jesus' eyes, right? That we are the ones, because of how hard we work and how faithful we are, and we're good Christians, that we should be at the front of the line. And maybe these people can come with us, and they should get in first, and they should be at the cool table. Not that the kingdom is like a club, but we'll just go down this road. But you get the VIP access, right? And so we can have that assumption, and what Jesus is telling us is not so fast. Why are you making assumptions about who belongs first? You're doing it based on the values of this world, but the values of my kingdom are very different than the values of this world. And so what assumptions are you making about yourself? What assumptions are you making about other people? Oh, they belong up there. No, they're the popular ones. Oh, they're the good ones. And Jesus is saying it might surprise you to know that there's people who may not be part of the cool crowd, who maybe shouldn't even know about the club. How'd you even get invited here? That those people actually might not only be invited, they actually might skip the line and go at the head table because of their humility, because of their heart. We have dismissed them by the world standards, but those people actually have a front row seat to me and my kingdom. See, Jesus talks about this idea of the first and the last. He's trying to tell us to reset our brains, reset our values, reset how we view people, and instead view it through the lens of Jesus. It might surprise you who's at the front and who's at the end. Again, not that the kingdom of heaven is a club. And so what's the deeper part of this? It's revealed in this conversation. In verse 12, they received their day's wage and they began to grumble. And they say this, which exposes their hearts. These who were hired last only worked 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us. Oh, that's the issue. It's not the dollar amount per se. It's not that you thought you worked overtime or you worked extra hard or as a bait and switch. We thought we're doing this, you made us do this. No. The wage is fine. The work was fine. All was good. You made them equal to us. We deserve to get the full day's wage for how hard we worked. They don't deserve it. You brought them to our table and our level, and that's not where they belong. Oh, that's the issue these people had. If you paid me $1 more and them $1 less, great, because I'm still above them. I just need to be above them because they don't deserve to be here. They don't belong at my seat, at my table. And so the landowner presses back. And he says, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a day's wage? Take your pay and go. This is great. This is what we agreed to. Take it and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave to you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or is the issue that you are envious because I'm generous? See, what Jesus was trying to deconstruct for us and what he was trying to deconstruct for the disciples, and there's layers to this, is there is this mindset of people that we're the ones that really belong around Jesus, and we're the ones that belong in heaven, and we're the right ones, and other people, maybe you can come in, but you got to jump through these extra hoops. You don't belong in our level. We're the ones that have worked hard, and we deserve it. For us, like an extreme example would be if you were like, look, I've lived my whole life surrendered to Jesus. I've dedicated my life to him. I've done all the things he asked me to do. I've tried to live as best I can. I've been generous. I show up early. I stay late. I go to the church. I go to the Bible. So I do all the things. And so, yes, I deserve to be in heaven. And yet somebody has lived an awful, evil life. And yet on their deathbed, they were going to confess their faith in Jesus and they get in? Does that seem fair? That doesn't seem right? We've done this. We've lived our whole life sacrificing for Jesus, trying to live as he's calling us to live. And this person did whatever they wanted their whole life and they get in at the 11th hour? Like, that can't be true, right, Jesus? Like, that's not the way it works. And even if you somehow let them in, I mean, they're at a table way, way, way far in the back. They got to go in through the service room and they don't get to walk in the door I get to walk in, right, Jesus? And yet what Jesus is trying to help us understand, what he wanted these people in the vineyard to understand is your focus should have been on what was in front of you, what we agreed to, what you were given. You should have been, what an amazing blessing and miracle that is. And the only other thing that should have happened is because you had such great gratitude, you should have been happy at everyone else who kept coming to work. Oh, it's amazing people are coming at 9 a.m. to take some of the work away from me. Hey, it's amazing people are coming at noon. It's amazing that those people came at 5 p.m. This is awesome. I should be so excited that they got a full day's wage. This is amazing. How generous is this person? What generosity, what mercy, what grace, what gratitude. This is incredible, right? Jesus is saying if somebody gets into heaven at the 11th hour with their last breath, no matter what they've done in their life, I am a God that forgives them and invites them into my kingdom. And we shall look at that and say, what an amazing God. How generous with his mercy. How generous with his forgiveness. This is incredible. Let's all go into the kingdom, right? That should be the focus. And instead, we're getting stuck on, no, they don't deserve it. But I did this. I've earned my way into heaven. See, this is what Jesus is trying to deconstruct from us, this mindset that we can fall into. And we can do it in smaller ways. We can look at others, man, I'm serious about my faith. That person's playing around with their faith, but why do they keep getting esteem? Why do they keep getting invited to things? How come their life looks a lot more blessed than my life? I'm the one that's doing it right. I deserve ... And we can begin comparing our lives to others, our faith to others, and begin to believe that we have this special access where Jesus is trying to remind us last week, this week, that his forgiveness is for all. That any one of us, no matter what we've done in our life, past, present, future, when we seek God's mercy, he gives us his mercy. And when we are forgiven by him, we are given eternity with him. It doesn't matter what's happened in our life. It doesn't matter what's going to happen tomorrow. That when we seek Jesus, he forgives us fully. And if we totally understood that, we should be stoked that we're at the party and everyone come with us, right? Instead of being fixated on what we think we deserve or why isn't it this, and we're comparing our lives. And for Jesus, this goes into such deeper layers because for the disciples who walked with Jesus, right, he was trying to get ahead of the issue that was already at bay, which is they thought they had some special access or privilege. Hey, we've been with Jesus since the beginning, right? 2 or 3 years, but since the beginning. And he knew that this could become a problem, and it became a bit of a problem where they thought they had the inside track, and these people that came 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, no, we actually walked with Jesus. Who are you? What are you trying to do? Okay, you can come, but just know that we are here and you are here. And there's an even deeper layer that we won't even get into this morning between the Israelites and the Gentiles, meaning the Jewish people and the non-Jewish people, and them believing because we were born into this family, we have a fast track to heaven, and if others want to come, maybe, but you got to jump through a bunch more hoops. And Jesus is like, oh, no, that's not the way my kingdom works. In my kingdom, those that may expect or believe that I get to go first because I've earned it might actually be in the back of the line because of their lack of humility. And those who are coming to the table desperate, broken, who don't even believe that they can really be saved by Jesus, Jesus is like, come with me, you're actually at the head table. This is what Jesus is trying to help us understand. I'll invite the worship team back up. And man, there's a lot of different ways we can respond. There's a lot of things that probably going through our mind that we're individually processing about comparison and our level of satisfaction to where we are in our life and what that looks like. And even in the midst of the hard, how can we still feel this layer of satisfaction? And the one thing I just kept thinking about all week as I was processing all of this stuff was just that word gratitude. I don't know how to undo all these things and navigate all these different layers, but I do know that if I continue to try to adopt a posture of gratitude, then some of these things will begin falling into the right place. That if I can continue recognizing how deeply I am known and loved by the God of the universe, that he knows me, he knows you. That if I can truly understand that and recognize that, how grateful should I be that the God of the universe cares enough about me to know me and to love me and to forgive me, that maybe that can begin shifting my heart a little bit. That maybe if I operate in gratitude, even in the midst of the hard and the difficult, if I can still see, okay, this is the blessing through this season, this is what God is doing. If I can focus on that, then maybe some of these other things will start getting set in the right places. It doesn't mean everything is solved. It doesn't mean everything is magically better. But if we can begin adopting a posture of gratitude this morning, then maybe we can become people that seek to come into spaces with open arms, that we want everyone to come to the party. Everyone's invited to the table. I'm not worried about where you're sitting or what you're doing. I'm just happy we're all here, right? We can maybe adopt that posture if we begin grounding ourselves with a sense of gratitude. So let me pray for us, church, and then we'll continue with just a little bit more worship. But Jesus, we thank you that you are a God who first loved us. And Scripture tells us, and I love this line, while we were still enemies of you, you gave your life for us. Jesus, you didn't wait until we had it all figured out or until we were acting perfectly or until we were saying all the right words. Father, while we were enemies of you, you loved us enough to give your life for us. And because of that, we can walk as those who are forgiven. Jesus, you invite us into your home. You invite us into your table. You say that we have a seat there, Father, that we are known and blessed. And there's nothing we can do to earn it, and there's nothing we can do to lose it, Father. We can't gain any more of your love, Lord Jesus. We can't lose any of your love, no matter what has happened in our lives. You are the God of compassion, of forgiveness, of love. And so, Father, I just pray that these truths that are easy to say out loud, but so much harder to just understand and embody, God, that you would just break through into our hearts this morning. That whatever places of resistance, whatever barriers we have, whatever challenges we have in understanding your love and your mercy, God, that you would begin removing those. Father, help us walk believing that we are loved and forgiven. And Father, fill our hearts with this sense of gratitude, Lord, and let us walk out feeling satisfied with the season you have us in and finding joy even in the midst of the hard. Father, help us have hearts that seek to invite and bring more and more people into the table, Lord, recognizing that we all come together by your mercy. That's the great equalizer. So Jesus, open our hearts, fill our hearts with gratitude this morning, and help us walk out in that posture. Amen.